Hello everyone, I'm your host Daniel Litwin, the voice of B2B, and welcome to another episode of Higher Education, a Catapult Solutions Group podcast. Again, I'm your host Daniel Litwin. I'm super excited for today's conversation, and before we dive in, I got to give you the basic plug, right? Make sure you're heading to our website, catapultsg.com, for more solutions on all of the industries that we serve, and of course for more Catapult content, including episodes of the podcast and other white papers, videos, blogs, you name it. You can also subscribe to Higher Education on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so hit that subscribe button and you won't miss any of our future conversations. So today's episode is a special one for Higher Education. We're obviously in studio, and we're not only getting two of our company's C-suite leaders on to discuss the company's vision and the company's ethos and trajectory, but it's also the first time that we're getting CSG's CEO on an interview here. So the stakes are high, right? I know I'm sweating beads over here, so the conversation's going to be an insightful one, it's going to be a fun one, and I'm looking forward to jumping in. With today's podcast, though, just to give you a little bit more context, we're wanting to reflect on the company's history and sort of peer inward a little bit, do a little company meditation, I guess you could say, to share with y'all how we got to where we are today. And then we want to learn from the journey of building a top staffing agency for roles across healthcare, life sciences, federal, engineering, industrial, finance, IT, technology services, on and on and on, right? We cover so many different verticals that the learning lessons for building one and then taking that knowledge and building the next are invaluable, and our leadership is going to help break that down for us today. So CSG leadership is joining us to detail how delivering staffing solutions for this range of industries has built CSG into the hardy, the cross-functional, and the powerful partner that it is today. And we also want to help understand what it means for us as a company to be on a continuous journey to a higher standard, pun intended, right? So let's go ahead and welcome our two C-suite guests. It's a real pleasure to be sitting in studio today with both Patrick Burke, Chief Executive Officer, and Alex Anderson, Chief Financial Officer of CSG. Patrick, great to have you on. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. That was an amazing intro. I got to hand it to you. That was awesome.
I tried to do my homework. I tried to come prepared and make y'all seem, well, I mean, I don't have to try too hard. Y'all already give off good vibes, but I had to make sure, I did my part, right?
Yes, it's great. It's great to be here. Now, it's my partner in crime here, Alex Anderson. It's awesome to be sitting here with him. We've been talking about doing a podcast for quite some time. It's my first podcast, so I'm excited.
Hell yeah. Alex, great to have you on as well. How are you?
Man, it's great to be here, and we need to hire you full time. Because you pitched the company well, and also you left out my unofficial title,
which is
Chief Fitness Officer.
Chief Fitness Officer.
So if anyone is out looking for a great company to work for, a great culture, and wants to get in shape, this is a good spot.
That's true. I mean, you definitely are bulked up.
Yeah, if you want to go big, you're there. Medium size, it's me. So we have different regimens for two different people.
And you've got me, slim.
Slim, medium, large. Anyway,
I need to honestly get on your regiment. But Patrick, Alex, it's a fantastic pleasure to have y'all in studio. And again, like we broke down, we're wanting to have some fun with this, but we also do want to dive into the nitty-gritty of how you built this company and what some of the intricate decision-making processes have led to, right? Those critical moments of having to make a tough call. How did you make it, and how did it lead you to the successful point that the company's at today, right? So first, let's do a little bit of career trajectory. So we'll start with you, Patrick. How did you land at CSG as a leader of the company, right? Trace that career trajectory and some of the dominoes that landed you here.
Yeah, I worked for a large staffing company for almost 15 years.
Oh, okay.
After that, I took 3-4 years off of staffing and had a non-compete. And then we started it with my brother Chris Burke, Ryan T-Roy, another founder was Matt Moore. And we started it in somebody's house back in 2013. And from there, I actually met Alex, 2020?
I think we met in 2015.
2015. I think it's important to talk about a little bit about how we met, because we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for the big man.
And obviously vice versa. You want to tell the story?
Yeah, Alex can tell the story, but let him tell the story. But it's a great story about how we met, and it's funny how life works, because if I didn't do an investment in a hospital, I would have never met him, and we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for Alex.
I think we got to get this story then. So it's like asking the couple, so how'd you meet?
I'm going to tell you, and we often get mistaken for being a couple when we're in public, but we just get along well. A brief kind of outline of my history prior to Catapult. So I started in private equity kind of by chance. I ended up with an internship as a summer associate at a private equity firm here in Dallas. A lot going on at the firm. It was a smaller shop. There's a lot of them here in Dallas. And one of the portfolio companies was a real estate development company. And had a great mentor there, brought me over to a full-time role within that portfolio company. And there were several real estate investments. And there were big pools of investors for each one of these individual facilities and entities.
Okay.
Patrick was an investor on several of those. So at the time, we were a very small shop. And the last maybe 6 months, I was like the only person interacting with investors on a regular basis, not necessarily investor updates, but just the day-to-day activity. Patrick came to the office one day to pick up a check, right? The issue in this instance was that the person who could sign the check was not at the office. So there was some
and in that story, just so you know, I drove all the way from McKinney down to Dallas and said, is my check there? And they said yes, and I walked into the office building somewhere down here, and it looked like there were boxes all over the place.
Yeah, so
and I thought I was going to meet some older gentleman, and here was this young buck, Alex Anderson, who they told me to come find.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, and that's what happened, and I could tell that this guy, a ton of energy, and if you don't know how far McKinney is from uptown Dallas or the Crescent Building specifically, it's really far. And if in rush hour traffic, it can take a long time, especially if you hadn't planned on it, but when you did, you plan on picking up a very large check. Right?
Trying to get past Park Lane and not be stuck there for 20 minutes on its own, garbage, yeah.
So anyways, that he came, was quite disgruntled that the check wasn't available. So I told him, I said, Mr. Burke, I'm going to go out of my way and I'm going to get this check signed for you, and I'm going to drive it to wherever you live. Okay. Which at the time I think was McKinney.
It was McKinney, and he said, I'll get it to you no later than 5 o'clock. So I'll just take over from here a little bit.
Take the afternoon.
So I'm trying to run a company, start a company with my partners, and I call him around 5:30. I'll never forget it. 5:30, and I said, hey, Alex, this is Patrick Burke. You were going to call me? He goes, hey, dude, I'm so sorry, man. My wife got in an accident. By the way, that's Hannah, who runs our Dallas office, who does a phenomenal job for us.
Amazing.
And was working at a competitor at the time. And he goes, hey, man, it's a car. I said, okay, yeah, okay. So he comes up, and we go to that bar in Allen. I forget the name of it.
We do this every time.
Yeah.
Bar Louie.
Bar Louie. And so he comes into Bar Louie with the check, and we sit down. There's no one there. I said, well, at least I can do is buy this guy a beer, because he had my check. And we sit down, and we're talking and getting to know each other. I didn't even know him. And I said, what are you going to do after you leave this place? And he said, I'll probably work for one of the big four, do something like that. And I'm like, and I really liked him. I was like, this guy's cool. And I said, I got a good head on his shoulders. And I said, you ever think about maybe helping me run a staffing company? And he said, let's talk. And then I said, what does your wife do? I said, well, I'd love to talk to your wife as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we met.
Keep it in the family.
Keep it in the family.
Yeah.
And that's a whole another story. Maybe at the end of the podcast we can go that route, but because she was done with staffing. And at the time, mind you, I was working in a private equity firm who was essentially responsible for investing wealthy individuals or funds money into businesses for an intended return. And so staffing as an industry for me was not one that was necessarily attractive, nor did I know much about it. The experience that I did have of staffing was my wife working at Robert Half, and that wasn't a very good one, right? Beyond the financial kind of dynamics as a potential investor in the industry. So I met him, and I was at the time in my career where I was like, I want to learn how to be an operator. Managing a business as an investment vehicle versus managing a business to grow and scale is very different. Right. So there are things that you never learn if you stay in the investment management space, the M&A space. And I met this guy, and I was like, this is the kind, I had met many CFOs and CEOs, and founders of businesses, and I met Patrick, I was like, this is the type of person who is not going to try to be a king, right? This guy can grow a business, he's got the right energy, and he wants to bring people into the organization that he knows will add value. Learn to trust them, develop them, and then let them do their job.
And the ego doesn't get in the way.
Ego doesn't get in the way. And for me, that was exactly what I was looking for. It was like, regardless of the industry, I mean, you guys could have been selling widgets at the time. I just knew it was a good place. I met the leadership team in October, I guess later that year or the next year, and I was like, this group of people is building something incredible. And I know, as the finance guy at the time, they didn't really have that. It's a blank canvas for me. I can go in and I can immediately make an impact. And so that was the story of
and I
October
think
2016.
ego and swagger. If you have ego and swagger, you have to have it if you're going to start something.
Yep.
But you got to have it in the right places at the right time to actually have a little swagger and attract people into the company. And he's 30 years old. I'm 52, and we met 6 years ago. And he is one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And we've confronted each other. We've cried together. We've laughed together. And that's what makes a good partnership, like a married couple. So there you go.
Exactly right.
So there it is. So it's a cool story, and just fate is funny because that was the day I decided to call and say, hey, is my check ready?
Right.
And it may not be us together today.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Well, I mean, y'all tee me up nicely to talk leadership styles. I wanted to ask y'all to reflect and look internally and share what is y'all's perception of your leadership style. We're going to ask that, but then I also want each of y'all to share how you perceive the other's leadership style, right? So we'll start with you first, Patrick. If you had to describe sort of your approach to leading CSG, both just sort of as a leadership philosophy separate from staffing, but then if you had to fine tune it too to being in the world that you're in, right? What does your leadership style mean to you? How do you approach it? To what effect?
Are you from Texas, by the way?
So I was born in Walnut Creek, but I've lived in Texas since I was like 3.
Y'all,
so.
you say y'all, and I love it's because my daughters were
Yes, I know.
born. My daughters Olivia and Isabel were born in D.C. in Georgetown, and they were here when they were 2 and 6 months old, and they say y'all. They're Texans, pretty much.
The y'all's baked in. Yeah. It's just easy. It flows off the tongue a little better than the yous guys, and
I agree. So leadership style,
Yes.
That's a great question. And I don't even know how to answer that question, but I would say my leadership style, I'm pretty intense. I love to inspire and motivate people. I'd love to believe in people and have people believe in themselves. I think once you believe in yourself, you can do a lot of powerful things. And I'd say give people autonomy and have them feel like they're an entrepreneur themselves in their own business would be what my style would be. I like to not micromanage, but there's times to micromanage and there's times not to. So I would say that's, and I would tell you that maybe not a leadership style, but hiring the right people is very, very important. So,
I mean, knowing how to hire and leading a staffing agency,
Yeah.
those things sound like they go hand in hand, indeed. Alex, how would you then describe Patrick's leadership style?
I think he nailed it. I think, and I already spoke to it when I was giving my introduction.
Yes.
So, and again, I think not just Patrick, but great leaders in general have the unique ability to develop people. So when you look at businesses who have become wildly successful, typically the person who started that business is really good at finding talent, putting them in the right seat, on the right bus, at the right time, within the company's life cycle. So your leadership style is very much set the expectation clear. I wouldn't call you an emotional leader, but I would say he leans more on the side of emotion and gut, and I feel like that is, again, that's another thing that's synonymous with great leaders, creators of things throughout history, not just businesses. But it sets clear expectations, moves very quickly, but you have to grow as quickly as we've been growing. We've made the fastest growing companies for the last several years in a row, and that's because it starts from the top. Even if not every detail is ironed out, the objective is still known, right? The objective is to get to 75 million in revenue. If along that path we have to kind of play catch up on figuring out what systems need to be in place to get there, that's okay, but that you're leading to the objective, not getting caught up in the minutiae along the way. And that's why we have a leadership team, right? That's why we all kind of collaboratively understand the vision, execute on the vision. So
individual and situational leadership.
Yeah.
So you can't manage and lead everybody the same. Everybody comes from different walks of life, and so different environments, which you have to know what makes people tick, and it's important. And I believe that one of the hardest things for any leader to do is confront and hit people between the eyes.
Yeah.
It's something that not many people do, and I think it's extremely important because you give a shit about them. You care about their families and who they are, and the only way to grow is to hear feedback, of course, positive and things that they can improve on.
Yeah. I mean, I know as someone who has been in, not as important positions of leadership as y'all, but then also on the receiving end of leadership, all those things matter a lot when there is that level of personability and honesty in interaction. You know that you are being treated like a trusted professional by your leader. and you are being asked to deliver on something with that level of trust too, right? You're not just executing on a task, but you're given a responsibility, and the expectations are set, like you said, and that helps make it, everyone's role a little easier.
And I think it's important. I learned from my daughters. I learned from a 6-year-old. You learn from everybody. Sure. You take little nuggets along the way in your life, and you just learn from other people. So nobody's perfect. I've made a lot of bad decisions along the way in the last 9 years.
You make a great point. That's another thing I would identify as a core component of your leadership style. Is like, and I learned a little bit from this too, because I don't think I was as good at it. I think there's a byproduct of me being young in my role, but learning constantly from people, regardless of their status, what industry they work in, where you meet them. Right, everyone you interact with can teach you something.
Yeah.
So you're good at doing that and allowing those people to make and leave an impression on you. So
yeah, and I went to in April. I went to Europe for about a month. Went to 5 different countries solo by myself. Didn't have hotel rooms in certain countries. Took the train, and just being there by myself and watching people interact in other countries, I learned a heck of a lot about myself.
Yep.
And just watching other people. So every day you're learning.
I think that's one of the most important qualities in a leader. Let's flip it now. Alex, I want to hear your own take on your leadership style. Right. So since you've been a CFO, what have you developed as your approach to leadership?
That's a great question in the way you phrase it. Since I've been a CFO, I think up until that point, something that was really beneficial for me was going through, at least until the age of 22, collegiate athletics, being a part of that. Sure. And so for me, and this wasn't like, I didn't play for Alabama as a 5-star linebacker recruit. I played at Division II school, Tarleton State University. And so very different dynamics at that level, right? Your scholarship doesn't last a year or 4 years. If you don't perform every semester, you go home or you lose your scholarship. So it's very different. The stakes are very high. And for a young person, you learn very quickly how to deal with adversity and how to set clear expectations for yourself and hold yourself accountable. Because if you don't, you're going to change your life. And so my leadership style, the kind of leader I wanted to be, was very much set clear expectations, try to identify great talent, but understand that not everybody is going to be, the MVP caliber, athlete or professional. But also get to know people's strengths and weaknesses, and show people on my team or in the rest of the organization that not only am I trying to take the time to understand who you are, personally and professionally, but also the competitive landscape, and then also your competition directly. And at our company, that might be, a set of financials that needs to be closed by the 15th of the month or earlier, an implementation of NetSuite. It might be, the client might be, any one of our various clients. The competitive landscape might be, staffing platforms that exist, other reputable staffing companies. Right. And then when I became a CFO, what I learned through really kind of learning on the fly, especially working with the international accounting team, which is totally new for me. Working with someone before the age of remote work was really had taken over the country and the workplace. I mean, I have a team that's sitting thousands of miles away from me, right, that has historically been providing a service, has not been a part of Catapult at the time. So just applying the same things, but now more than ever, and I think this is because of my background, and Patrick might be able to attest to this, I'm a finance guy. I love economics. I want to empower people with knowledge. So if someone, and I relish in our company even today, if someone comes to my office and wants to talk about how they can make $10,000 a month in commission, if they don't already know how to do that, where to find the file, I want to show them. Yeah. But I want people to understand the economics of the business, and so that you don't have to call people into an office and say, you're not performing well. The expectations are clear. And if we didn't set those expectations and you don't have access to seeing that, we're failing as leaders. And so for me, orienting my leadership to objectivity, leading based on data, that's something that I've gotten better at since I've been in the role of CFO.
Yeah, and when he tells people about how to make that money, we both realize that there's a lot of people in our company making a lot more money than both of us.
That's true.
So
which is
at
exactly what we
Catapult,
want.
Yeah, right.
that's what we want.
Perfect.
And he making anywhere from $60,000 to $600,000-$700,000 a year in staffing. So guys, put your resumes in and let's see what we can do.
Yeah,
So
it's
you
like
gotta cut
sounds nice
that
to me.
Yeah, so let's cut that and let's just circulate this on the internet.
That was pretty cool. It is pretty cool.
Yeah, right. The podcast will be just at 30 seconds.
26, 27, 28, 29 years old, making really, really good money, and it makes you feel good about building something like that we've done, along with my brother and Ryan and the executive team that we have, Mitch Blackwell as well, who helped us start the company in the beginning. So,
I mean, I really get, like when I hear y'all describe your approach to leadership, I hear, wanting to empower the folks that you work with, build a culture of self-sufficiency, right? And I think that is an important aspect of a collaborative workplace, when every individual, piece of the puzzle is fine-tuned to where they can master their slice of, divided labor pool, you could say, right? If each person is self-sufficient enough to achieve their thing well,
right.
Expectations are set well, then the collaboration happens naturally, because each person fills an essential gap. And so that gets me into my next question, which is understanding how you even got to the point where you could scale that across an entire organization. And then also push that culture into the folks that you bring on as your product, right? As the services that you then staff for, and build that culture not only internally but externally. So,
without said,
Yeah.
I didn't hear much what you said, to be very honest, because I have to say this. So Alex Anderson.
Yeah.
So we were driving down here. So this kind of sums up Alex.
Okay.
So we were laughing. His wife is Hannah. Okay, she works in the company. She's a senior person that runs our Dallas office.
Yep.
And I said, I've known him and I've gotten to know him so well. As I said, he's one of my dear friends. And to see them both bring Lincoln into the world, it's been awesome. Bought a new house in Salina. It's great. And I said, it's funny that if Hannah was at a party and they're like, hey, what does your husband do? They're like, oh, he's in finance. And everybody has a stigma about somebody in finance. He's very unique because you meet him and he's incredibly smart. He does set clear expectations, but he could sell for the company too. So he's got a lot of attributes that just go across all different areas of the organization, and he builds trust with his people overseas as well as people inside of the company. So it's been cool to watch.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah. I appreciate that, but that's one of the things that is a theme in Catapult. And I think these guys started this in a garage or shed, whatever it was, and
The story.
back in 2013, 14, one of those.
all good companies start out of a shed, right?
We
Yeah.
didn't know what the hell we were doing.
Come on.
That is something that theme reverberates across the company. Like I want Natalia and Tanya, who are sitting in Ukraine, one of them now in Poland, due to recent events. But I want them to be able to get on a phone with a client and sell our service. I want them to be able to get on a phone potentially with an investor and sell the company. Everyone in this organization should know how to sell the services we provide. And that will never change. And so you make a good point there, but that's critical. And I think any organization.
And we love drinking tequila together. Tequila, lime juice. It's just fun,
It's better
we love
than celebrating.
We love our Casamigos, and it's what we do.
Not to steal a corporate tagline, but bring the beach to you. As a certain brand of an alcohol says, not sponsored by. Okay, so let's get into the early days of Catapult. You mentioned the garage, metaphorical or literal, but let's break down how you strategically built the company in the early days. Since you've been a leader at the company, feel free to also share your journey of building the last, 6-ish years, right? Yep, cool. So again, how have you strategically built the company out, chosen the verticals that you want to serve, and refined your approach to staffing to internalize some of what you just broke down for me, y'all's approaches to leadership and the sort of culture that you're wanting to instill in your employees and then the folks that are being staffed?
I'll take the beginning and then he can take the second part. Starting a company is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
I remember sitting there with Ryan and Chris. Ryan and Chris went down to San Antonio because of non-compete and geography. But I remember sitting in a little room and I had a journal, and what I had was all of my family and friends and names that I knew. Went through my Rolodex and my phone, that's all I had. And I started calling, and it was very interesting to see people that I thought would give me an opportunity did not, and people that I didn't think did. And you'd smile and dialing and working your ass off to get meetings back in the day when meetings were more prevalent, pre-COVID. And really anything at all that we could get to pay the bills and keep the lights on. And we ended up winning a project, like a 75-person project, which really, really helped. But in the beginning, it was just do whatever you can to get business, to get revenue, to make money. And then we started getting a little more strategic, probably a year, 2 years in, and then got real strategic third year in when he came on board and really set it down to 4 different things about retention. Higher rates and all duration, all that kind of stuff. So.
And here, before we transition to your part, those early days when you're having to build from scratch, it seems like you'll take any opportunity you can get, right, to really build that foundation. So in that period of sort of controlled chaos, how do you then also, or how did you sort of implement a through line where you saw an end goal and all of that controlled chaos was still building towards a company culture with, that kind of empowerment that you wanted to bring on board, that kind of self-sustaining nature that you wanted to instill in your employees, right? Mesh those two worlds.
So, one more time.
Yeah, so basically, in the beginning,
chaos.
Chaos. You have to take any opportunity you can to build the company out. That means that it might be harder to have that single vision, that through line, as you're working towards, well, this wasn't in my plan, but I'm going to take it on anyways. It's going to help grow the business. When you're in that world, how did you approach maintaining that through line, that vision for the end goal of what you wanted the company to be, right? So that even as you were maneuvering things that maybe were a little out of the ordinary or unexpected, they were still in service of a bigger picture.
I guess the best way to answer that question would be when you're working with a client, they're giving us business that we really didn't want. But I saw the end result of, I know they have the good business that we want. Call it IT, longer durations, better bill rates, easier to maintain. When you start seeing that your average contract was 2 months, 3 months, it's a crazy cycle of putting people back to work. But I knew if we gave customers a good quality service and asked them, hey, if we do a good job here, are you going to give us the IT and engineering business, the business that we want to get? And some was a lot yes, and some was, hey, you got to work longer, and maybe it wasn't a good client, but seeing the vision that we're going to get there. And I don't know what year it was, Daniel, that we really changed and went with those 4 key things that transformed our business and got everybody on board to focus on higher bill rates, longer duration, which makes it easier for back office, accounting and finance, less energy and maintaining contractors. You don't want somebody on contract for 2 months or they're quitting after 2 weeks. Not fun.
Right. At all. Not at all. All right, Alex, now on your end then. Recount then the last 6 years of your leadership journey through Catapult and what you have seen as what were the early days for you at CSG and where things have grown, right? How the company has strategically built up more verticals and its approach to staffing over those years.
Daniel, we could spend the next 2 hours talking specifically about how we positioned ourselves, why we did it, and then where we think that puts us in the competitive landscape. Like now and moving forward. So this is where you'll have to control me a little bit because I could drone on here. So I joined in October 2016. These guys had built a $19 million business through the effort that Patrick just described by, hey, just hitting the streets. Pure work ethic and initiative and grind and hustle, right? So what it takes to build a business.
Yeah, and if we didn't do that, the company wouldn't be here.
Company wouldn't be here, right? And you could make the argument all day, start in a niche and focus, and then you'll deeper penetration. It's not how it happened here. And so the business was established. As a finance guy, and I said earlier this was like a blank canvas. So when I got here, Patrick he let me in on this before I joined. So there was tremendous opportunity to improve business analytics. Right. So when I joined the company, for the most part, we were making decisions based on historical financials, right, which we're looking at a month in arrears, and weekly GP reports. And for us, that basically means weekly gross profit. How was every division of the company operating, or how efficient are they? and every person. What we weren't spending a ton of time on, because we didn't really have this level of visibility, so we had to build this solution, is divisional data, right? Average contract length per contractor, separated by labor category, and then also geography, right? At the time, Catapult, and when I joined, we had offices all over the country. The land and expand growth strategy was very much at play, and that had worked historically. And so in 2016, we start to peel back the onion. We build in reporting capabilities that give us the data that we need. We can see or have a better picture of what efficiency we have within certain areas of the business, and what maybe a lack of efficiency we weren't aware of prior to this capability. So we started to look like, one, where's the boat going, right? Where is the IT industry growing most substantially? IT. That was the focus for us at the time. So we say, okay, well, within our business, IT is by far the best labor category to operate in. At the time, we didn't have people in the organization, aside from a few, Mitch Blackwell being the primary one at the time. We didn't have people who could move us in that direction. So initially it was, hey, this is the objective, IT, longer term contracts, right? For us and for potential investors, for the bank, right? That lets us make decisions and start to shift kind of the way we think from growth and it kind of being haphazard and like, hey, this happened, react, right? Very reactionary at the time.
Well, even within just the scope of a few months now, right? Because
Exactly.
you could scope out now longer term contracts. You had revenue flowing in for at least, I mean, what does longer term actually mean in practice?
For a longer term contract for us is 6 to 9 months. So in the last 4 to 5 years, we've shifted our mix of business almost entirely to technical. So IT is a percentage of revenue, to give you some perspective or some context. In 2016 was about 20 to 25% of total revenue. Today it's 50%. Life sciences represents a material percentage. Healthcare represents a material percentage. So you look at technical roles or knowledge jobs, right? That for us is about 75% of our revenue. Contract length over that period of time went from 2.5 months roughly to 7+. The average spread or gross profit generated per producer, that's salesperson or recruiter over that period of time, more than doubled, right? So people on average are making a lot more money. So we built in scalability in 2016 and 17. We made the decision he was referring to really in 2017. We peeled back the onion. We said, what direction do we need to go in? And in 2017, we had a leadership meeting. We're like, this is what we're doing. This is the direction we need to go in. These are the kind of people we need to hire. We made some strategic hires. We brought in Chris Lester.
And then bringing in Angelo Salustri, who's our president and COO today, who is all IT in his background. And,
Very cool.
Yeah,
And that was I believe, end of 2017. So we started to go and find people who could help us transform the business. And that's what happened. And so, right now it's, and I know you'll probably ask questions about this. I don't want to jump ahead, but right now it's very much, how can we be disruptive?
Yeah.
Right? There are things disrupting our industry. How can we play in that space, and then as a result of that, create differentiator? So I don't want to jump ahead, but that's where we're at now.
And the growth, 19 million, then we went to 27 million.
Yep.
Along the way, my business partner, Matt, we have a relationship with a bank, and he's calling me and said, hey man, we need $150,000 to cover payroll. And I'm like, what? So I'd call my wife Angie and go, hey, could you put $150,000? Matt did plenty of it along the way, and he was out of the country, so we were dealing with that stresses of growing a business. So you want to grow at the same time.
Yeah, right.
You got to pay your contractors and pay people. So there was a lot of hairy times that we had along the way.
This is a good tangent, Patrick.
Yeah.
This is a good tangent. I think it's important. So our finance audience, our accounting and finance folks will really appreciate this. So at the time when I joined, and Patrick was aware of this too, like our balance sheet was upside down.
Yeah.
Staffing is a very capital intensive business, right? You can't slow pay your cost of sales or cost of goods, right? I can't tell the steel manufacturer, hey, we're going to be 30 days late.
Right.
Because the steel manufacturer, as it applies to Catapult, is Joe, who is our employee, right? And if we don't pay him on time, that's a huge problem. Right. So cash flow was really tough. 2016 to really 2018, 19, we were calling anyone that we knew to set up private lines of credit. Our great partner at Legacy Texas Bank, now Prosperity.
That's my bank.
Oh, really?
It's a great bank.
Cool.
And the people we were working with, I want to say their name because I don't want to give them unwarranted or attention or unsolicited attention. But we basically were using a line of credit as like a permanent working capital line. Right? That's not how it's supposed to work, and they let us do it. Wow. And we finally came out of that. Like the big goal, the big pie in the sky goal in 16, 17, 18 was cash flow profitable, and let's get a positive balance sheet ratios. Let's not have a negative net worth, right? And we passed that, and when we passed that threshold, we just blew past it.
Yeah,
and we were flying at the time.
When you're growing like that, we didn't take any outside money, meaning we didn't give any equity up. And people always ask the question, man, how did you guys grow to $50, $60 million without getting any outside and giving equity away? We never did.
Right.
So we great relationship with the bank and individual, Matt, myself, another gentleman named Thad that was part owners as well, really helped us get through all that, those times.
Those were hectic days though.
Yeah.
I had more gray hair then than I do now,
Yeah, right.
which is weird.
And just as for the sake of a podcast, you want to grow because you always grow, but you never think, when you start your business, when you're growing so much, you're paying your internal employees, you're paying all these contractors. We're not getting paid from our customers until 45, 60, 90 days later. So we're on the phone saying, you guys owe us $200,000. And I drove up to Oklahoma with you
drove up to Oklahoma
for a $5,000 check from this lady, and it got hostile in there.
100%.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I'm like, you owe us $5,000. She's like, well, and I'm like, you owe us $5,000, and we're not going to leave until we get the $5,000. I mean, that's the shit that we did.
Yeah,
and people don't know those.
Standing in the lobby.
Yeah,
like,
driving up to Oklahoma City.
Yeah, one of the first meetings that I went on at Catapult was going over to a very large client's office in Irving. And sitting in a lobby. I mean, they owed us over $150,000, and for a company that's 19 million in revenue, that's on the that's toying with profitability, on an accrual basis, like 150K is a ton of money,
critical,
right?
yeah.
That's life-changing. And now the first meetings, I sat in a lobby until I had someone come out and meet with me to discuss it, and there was some action item or some set date on when I could expect a check. And I said, I need this before I leave.
It's kind of fun to talk about it.
Multiple times.
It's fun to talk about the past and just to really kind of feel the way we felt back then, and it feels accomplished to get where we are today.
Right.
And a lot of people that are listening to this podcast may not know a lot of those things and the stresses that we went through. Only a small group did, and it was interesting time. I learned a lot. For sure.
The metaphorical arm wrestling that you had to do,
for sure.
down to the wire.
Yeah.
I want to bring it back just a little bit and talk about what is perceived to me as, it sounds like around 2016 through about 2018, y'all made the focused decision to digitally transform the business. Not only digital transformation of obviously the services that you were providing and that you were going to focus more on IT, but then also you mentioned a refining of your internal digital transformation, right? Understanding layers of analytics, getting into the nitty-gritty of all of the various verticals and the data that you were getting to refine your business strategy for scale. What would you say were the biggest obstacles in digitally transforming internally and externally and completely taking on IT as the core staffing vision for the company, right? What were the biggest obstacles and why? And feel free to give me some, OMG
I mean, I'll
stories.
just tell you, number one, getting the business.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knew really who Catapult was. I mean, we're relatively a small staffing company. We just heard this podcast, but there's 20,000 staffing firms. There's only 150 staffing firms over 100 million. And we're going to push in the $70, $80 million this year. We'll be there next year.
You're getting there.
So it's interesting, it's less than 0.5%.
For real.
So training and development on people, and just quite frankly, getting people to wrap their heads around it's tougher to go after that business, and you have to educate yourself on having those conversations and hiring the right people to do it. Right. So that just that transformation wasn't easy, and then getting everybody in the group to understand where we're going was not easy, but we did.
Yeah, and he spoke to the most difficult part of that transformation. Is it's very easy, relatively speaking, to go and buy tools off the shelf, develop your own that give you better business analytics, that allow you to look, peer through the veil, look behind the veil rather, and really see how your company's doing. And there's consulting firms you can go pay to do that as well. We didn't do that, but that's available too. The most difficult part of that transformation was finding the people that could do it. Like we had to completely rebuild our staff for the most part. And obviously that didn't happen over time, like immediately. And nor was anyone forced out, right? This is a performance company, and people who perform stay. Ideally, we care about our people more than anything else. And we're a services business, and in the business of people. And the staffing firm's primary value proposition to candidates is not like just finding them a job. Like a recruiter, the role of recruiters changed fundamentally over the last 20 years. Right? Staffing was was growing up in the 2000s, and things were still very manual. Patrick tells me about when they had file cabinets of resumes. Right? Can you imagine? I can't imagine that. No. And so the role of recruiter is very administrative heavy. Right. But now, the best recruiters are consultative. And Josh, if you haven't listened to Josh and Mike's podcast, I think it was the last one, they go into how we're trying to be different. And recruiters are consultants to candidates. Right. So even if they're not the perfect fit, maybe for a great job for one of our clients or to support a project of one of our clients, it's the responsibility of the recruiter and the salesperson to align those two things and then give that person a job. And that's just one piece of the recruiter. So that's the value add. So now our recruiters are spending more time doing that. So in 2017, 2018, we didn't have very many people that could go and do this. And thank goodness we had Mitch Blackwell, who could come in and train our delivery engine how to deliver on this business for clients that we're trying to also convince we have this capability.
Right, and be able to communicate with trust and confidence on a whole new vertical that was not part of y'all's background. And that's something that I'm curious about. Then how did you take your approach to leadership that we broke down earlier in the podcast and apply it to, time to radically transform the business, time for us to adopt this ability to maneuver IT staffing, and then disseminate that down an organization and hire for those roles,
bullied
right?
people like crazy. Bullied people, got them in line like that, and said, if you're not going to change, get the hell out of here.
No. Like Pip's going out every day.
No, I come from an old school, so when he talks about resumes and file cabinets, I remember in 1994, so was that 2024 would be 30 years for me in the industry. Okay. And I had a company car and a bag phone, like the phone that you would carry out that maybe some of you don't know, but I thought I was the coolest guy ever.
With like this big receiver.
A 23, 24-year-old guy with a bag phone, doing business deals.
Hell yeah.
But we would have a meeting. We didn't even have, when I started, we didn't have the internet.
At all?
No, nothing. We didn't have email. So it literally was crazy. We would have files of resumes, and after the meeting, it was you have A through C, and you would sprint to the file cabinets, the first to get there, to pull resumes out and just start calling the numbers on top for a software developer, software engineer. It was crazy. And then just finding the client where you're going. We didn't have Google Maps.
Right.
We didn't have Waze. We had maps in our car.
Not even MapQuest.
No, nothing. We had nothing like that. So it's just kind of funny to see where we are today and all the tools that are out there. And I actually think sometimes the tools get in the way of just pure work ethic.
Yeah,
actually.
Well, that's a good point. It's important to mention this. You ask about how we made the transition. What were the challenges? Another big one was having the right systems for our employees, especially in production roles, to operate in. Yes. It's hard to tell a salesperson or recruiter, hey, go in the system, enter this information multiple times in multiple different places. You can't do that. Also, you're suppressing someone's ability to make money. Right? If we're asking people to use systems in an inefficient environment, or tech stack, if you will, we're basically slowing down their career progression.
Make your life harder for yourself.
Right, and so we had to change our ATS, our applicant tracking system. Okay. Right, we did not have good data. So, at 20 million, we're going back and, essentially, and this is, I think, a learning lesson for anyone listening to this who's trying to build a business. If you're going to do one thing, spend some time and invest in setting up the primary platform your business is going to operate on early, because we learned the hard way, if you don't, you're going to spend a lot more money than you should, and you're not going to get the efficiency of a potentially really powerful tool that would transform your business positively.
You know how many platforms have we had?
Bad data. Well, ATSs we've had.
I mean,
you guys had 2 in the first 3 years before I got here. And
four or five.
We're now going to our 4th.
Yeah, which we think
non-healthcare staffing
is the one that's going to change a lot. We really like it, yeah.
But that's really important. But balancing that, and we'll talk about it later when we talk about, I think, disruption and how we're trying to be competitive long term, is the old school way of doing things, and remembering what staffing companies are ultimately responsible for doing for their client. And automation and systems, marrying those 2 things is critical. And if you do too much of one, then no one's going to be selling to clients, and no one's going to be talking to candidates.
I'd always go old school, and he'd be like, hey man, I'm kind of tired, Patrick, of hearing the old school way. And then I'm like, you're always talking about technology and platforms, and I get all that shit too, Alex, but you forgot about what gets you here too.
The ethic,
and so the work ethic, but that's why we work well with each other, because I go home at night and I'm like, you know what, he makes a great point, and I'm sure he goes home and says, he makes a terrible point, that's bullshit. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but you're right.
No, just that, it's a mindset.
Yeah.
Sense of urgency, be maniacal, have a sense of urgency, and we call it, I don't want slow walkers. And everybody hear me? I don't want slow walkers. We want fast walkers, people that have a fast pace and want to work in a fast-paced environment, because stuff changes all the time.
Indeed.
All the time.
What has been one of the most recent changes that you've had to maneuver as leaders, and what'd you learn from it?
Oh, there's several. There's several things we can cite. I would say.
Reference the bibliography of notes.
Yeah. Well, I would say a more recent one would be, shifting our healthcare business, and I think this one is pivotal to Catapult's future. It was transitioning the focus of our healthcare company entirely from locums and physician staffing to travel nursing and allied. That we essentially were at a point where this business that we have been holding on to for a long time, one of the first things I proposed when I got here was like, why are we keeping this? And Patrick and Matt wanted to keep this business going. There was a ton of opportunity. But in 2019, early 2019, really, we were like, no more locums. Brought in great leader, Jody Turner, physician staffing. I'm gonna try not to use jargon, but we completely transformed the business. And the big reason why it was difficult, everyone had to learn the business. We all had to learn travel nursing, and then 3 years into doing it, we were hit by COVID, which happened right when we were in the middle of we're about to hit our stride with that company, and then the next year, so 2021. Most of the growth at Catapult came from Catapult Healthcare. Catapult Healthcare went from $130,000 in revenue to $1.3 million a month. From January to December.
Yeah.
That was monthly revenue in January versus monthly revenue in December, and we maintained that efficiency and production level for the most part.
It's almost
And I would say that
was
two people that stayed with us through the entire process of that and all the obstacles is Jody and Shannon. Mm-hmm. They have stuck with us and are the brains behind the operations. They've done an amazing job, and just the challenges we had. I mean, physician staffing takes a long time to put a doctor to work. Well, travel nurse, you can put them to work within a week or two and credential them the right way. So it's been a great transition. We've done a great job, and then now we're doing allied. Basically, allied is everything outside of a doctor or a nurse, is everything else in a hospital, surgery center, any kind of medical facility. So those two have been instrumental in where we are today, for sure.
So going back to people, people in leadership positions at Catapult are the reason why we're able to make these changes. They're the reason we've been able to stay at the top of the list and win the awards that we're winning. Shannon and Jody are the example of the two in healthcare. But I mean, you can list, there's a huge list of names of people who are critical to every transformation at Catapult.
Yeah, what I'm saying, your question was obstacles, right? Is that what?
Basically, just what has been one of the most recent changes you've had to implement at the company, and a learning lesson that you took away from it.
I'll tell you something that from the beginning until now is talk about ego. So the ego of brick and mortar. Okay, we want to have 15 offices across the country, and that's not really necessarily true anymore. to grow and be sustainable, you don't need to have offices. You can do things remote now today and have your core offices and have delivery centers, and that's kind of the direction that we've gone. So it's not really an obstacle, but it was hard to wrap my mind around it, because you want to be in the cities where you're servicing, but you don't always have to be there. We have remote people in Phoenix and LA and Houston and Cincinnati and Nashville and New York and Florida, but we've got our core offices in Boston, Virginia, which is our federal practice, and Dallas, and we both have our top secret clearance, which is kind of cool, right? And we're cleared as a company too, to do business with the government. So
top secret clearance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can talk about that. We'll need to check. We need to confirm that.
The red reticles start to.
I'll get. I think we can say that in this format. I'm pretty sure we can.
Sure we
but
can.
yeah, no.
We'll see.
Basically, we're secret agents. Just kidding.
Oh, okay. It's like, wow.
But we
now,
might be. So careful.
Now SWAT team's definitely busting in.
But it's kind of cool. My daughter's like, "Dad, you have a top secret clearance?"
It is
I'm
cool.
like, yeah. Everybody does.
Cool.
No.
That's so fantastic.
But we don't get to. We, unfortunately, and Patrick and I talked about this before. But I was really expecting to be brought into that community.
Yeah.
And just be welcomed with UFO files and all of this information that I've always been curious about, and it never happened.
No, it
so never happened.
Geopolitical machinations, all the good stuff. Yeah. Maybe next visit to the secret base.
That's the second half of the podcast.
Exactly.
We'll start talking about UFOs.
That's for subscribers only for a small fee. Yeah, right.
Find us on Patreon.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Love it.
So as we move into the end of the podcast, I want to start to look ahead a little bit for CSG. So I'll hone in on the IT side of things, since that has become such a critical component of y'all's growth and scale moving forward. Sort of considering the place that we're in with, sort of a complete rethinking about cybersecurity standards, for example, the growing breadth of what IT even means to include OT as well, the growth of IoT devices, sort of reshaping the dynamics of IT work and skills. How are you maneuvering that challenge? Maybe you all see it as an opportunity and not even a challenge at all, but how are you maneuvering that moving forward and sort of continuing to evolve this practice that has become so essential?
Conference call about IoT today, this morning. I'll let you take it from here, but that's so funny you brought that up. So
yeah, no, you're right. There are a couple of parts to that. One is how those dynamics are affecting Catapult internally.
Yep.
The other is how we're aligning our capabilities and investment to those things. So from an internal perspective, we have to, due to the nature of our business, have a very secure environment. So we have done a lot of work, and Roma Kalika has done the majority of this herself, done a lot of work to enhance and improve the security posture of Catapult, so that we can, one, not only serve federal clients, but also hospital systems, so that we can protect people's information, because the risk of the risk of attack is so much higher, because as technology, RPA, as it's become more efficient to do, perform legal work and services with technology, it's also a lot easier to penetrate someone's environment and steal information, steal money, right? or whatever it might be.
Which we have history with that.
We've got a history of that. On the other side, and this is where Richard Negron, we talk about recent changes and what we've done to kind of enhance our competitive posture as well. Richard Negron, bringing him in as the CIO and the leader of Catapult Technology Services. All of the things you just mentioned are at the top of our priority list as it relates to developing capabilities. So we want to, and I don't want to give too much information. We just recently, one of our first big projects at CTS was specific to cybersecurity, and we built something that we ideally can package, redeploy for other clients. And so this is where companies like Catapult start to hit stride. Is developing capabilities that don't cannibalize the existing capabilities of the organization. What got us to the dance of staffing will always be a staffing company. What we can do is leverage the delivery engine that we built that's hyper efficient, leverage the talent relationships that we have, the Richard Negrons, Patrick's relationships, everyone's relationships, and then add to our scope of services right? I think that's ideally. I mean, Amazon started as a online bookstore, right? Amazon provides almost every good that I consume in my home now, right? To the extent that I need a dedicated recycle service just for Amazon boxes.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Hannah.
The drone dropping it off.
Exactly. So, I mean, yeah, we want to be on the bleeding edge of these kind of emerging trends, to the extent that we can perform at a high level for our clients, but not cannibalize
What got us here?
what got us
Yes.
here. Yeah.
And I like that mentality too, because it is aware of the fact that, especially in this era of mass digital transformation across all industries, if you hone in on finding great solutions, and I'll hone in back on IT, right? But if you find great solutions to continue to grow your approach to IT staffing, often the insights that you're going to gain from there will apply to the other industries that you're helping staff for, as a consequence of, oh, well, IT's changes are bleeding into X industry, Y industry, Z industry too. And that's impacting how those professionals have to interact with their platforms, with their daily operations. And so I like that your head is already in that place of, how can we take one vertical's learning lessons, apply them across all of them, and create this holistic scaling vision.
What are you doing tomorrow? You want to have coffee tomorrow?
Let's do it, dude.
If you don't work out at market scale, we'd love to chat with you.
Well,
So the business, in the U.S. and the staffing industry, you say the Fortune 100 companies that we work with, Fortune 100 companies, and you get requirements and you place people, but having Catapult Technology Services and the addition of Richard Negron has been amazing to have, because you're dealing with CIOs and CTOs around the staffing traditional models of MSPs, where everything's going through a software, through a system, where we become more sticky with the client, where they continue to need us just with a small project and another project. So that's exciting. And then being over in Europe for a month and piggybacking off all the clients we have here in the US, having over 100 clients, they do business international. So being able to go and staff them overseas, and then our business partners, most of their business is in Europe, and to be able to piggyback off that as well. And then just having a delivery center that I chatted with you this morning about through Richard's relationship from Puerto Rico, is having recruiters and delivery in Puerto Rico, and delivering and helping us staff in the US. So there's some exciting things that we're doing, but we don't want to give too much away on some of those things.
Cards have to be held close to
a
the
little
chest
bit.
to some degree.
But none of this would, Richard and Chris Lester, and they've been instrumental, and the executive team and everything we're doing. So it's been really cool.
I mean, it sounds like y'all have really, done your homework and invested in the right people to support the growth of the business. At every step, it seems like you've understood where to bring in the right leadership vision and the right skill set to fill in gaps that y'all can't provide yourselves, right?
But the gaps moving forward, to me, is always going to be hiring. Hiring the right people for this industry is crucial. It creates the culture. People want to be in a fun culture. I think Dallas has got 50 people in the office at Park and Preston, and it's cool to, we've won a ton of awards, best places to work, middle market 50, fastest growing. So you're proud of it, but it comes down to people.
Definitely. Well, it's a validation too that you're doing something right. You know what I mean? If the workplace is naturally getting to the point where it's fun and you're scaling to degrees that you couldn't even have imagined 6 years ago, right? That means you're doing something right. So It's exciting. You've mentioned this several times now, Alex, but you mentioned disruption, right?
Yeah.
That's the future of the business. So without revealing too much, what excites you about the future of CSG, and when you say disruption, what do you have in mind?
He's excited for Cancun in March.
Yeah.
Because he's been working out a lot, and we have a contest.
Chief Fitness Officer.
We have a contest going on for March, so it's exciting.
So Patrick is one of those naturally lean guys, right?
Right.
I don't
Great
have the luxury of that.
metabolism.
I have I'm the natural eat way too much guy. So for me, I have to work harder at it. So we're going to go down here and we're going to see who has a lower body fat percentage. And
My brother's involved with this too, Chris.
But these are the kind of little tangential competitions that we have that keep things fresh.
It's really funny. My brother
like to
Chris,
compete.
he's 54.
Yep.
And he's got 2 young boys, 8 and 6 years old, and he's hysterical. So he wanted to create the contest and then I think he's going to be a part of it. And he texted me over the weekend. He's like, dude, He's like, I'm starting this contest. I'm at a pizza party with my 8-year-old, and they've got all this food here. It's kind of funny, actually. So I'm like, I don't have that. It's all about diet, my man.
Exactly. Hey, but you got to take inspiration from where it comes, right?
Yeah. Daniel, you're exactly right, man. But that'll be fun. But no,
disruption.
That is a disruption, a positive one, I would say. So when I talk about disruption, I could cite the name of plenty of companies, and this is something that, and Patrick's heard me talk about this for years now, leadership meetings, board meetings, been bringing this up because, one of the things I'm always trying to look out for is like, what's on the horizon? One, as it relates to our capabilities as they exist today, how are we distinct or differentiated, and what could come in? Any entrepreneur, if you're starting a business, you should work through like a kind of a flow chart of things. One of them is competitive landscape and potential disruptions for technology. You asked earlier how technology is affecting our business or how we are leveraging technology to enhance our services. A significant threat, but also opportunity for the staffing industry is platforms that are effectively eliminating the layer between employers and the talent.
Okay.
And so you look at companies like ShiftKey, ShiftSmart. There are some real players that have material market share in this space. All of these platforms are specific to shift labor right now, things that don't require the primary value proposition of a staffing firm, which is we understand your business and we'll find the perfect candidate for you. Right. Those roles and labor categories don't necessarily need that. So those are going to be the first, it's like any new technology. The low-hanging fruit for this one specifically is shift-oriented labor. And so for us, we've basically moved away from that completely. But what we want to do long-term is see how can we integrate some of the benefits of these platforms into what we do. So looking at automation, not automation to the extent that our recruiters are no longer doing their job, to the extent that salespeople are no longer on the phone with clients, they're glorified account managers.
This is where we like.
But our opportunity is to ensure that our salespeople, empower them, right, make it as efficient as possible for them to do their job. And what is the most value add service, if you will, or task of people in those roles? It's nurturing relationships with clients, creating new relationships with clients. For a recruiter, it's creating and nurturing relationships with candidates and being that consultant to them. But what still happens is a lot of administrative work, right? So at the end of the day, if you have to take the time to generate a report for a thing that someone in leadership is going to see, as opposed to it, some platform or service taking data that's already in your environment and then producing that automatically. A recruiter that's spending 30% of their day sourcing as opposed to being on the phone with candidates. Right. To what extent can we automate 30% so that they can spend the majority of their time on the phone with candidates doing the thing that's going to make them money and grow the business?
Building relationships.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
So he's always in my ear about all of that stuff, the automation, which I get. You want to be more efficient. Recruiters can come in and have a list of things to call, but I'm on the other side of the coin where you can never lose the mindset of work ethic, where people coming in out of college thinking that everything's going to be there for them, and you lose that work ethic and what got us where we are today. So that's, he and I go back and forth with that. I believe in automation, no question about it, but I also believe that it takes a mindset to get where we're going.
The metaphor to this, Patrick, is like knowing how to navigate without the Maps app on your phone, right? So there's tremendous value in that, right? So you can make the argument all day. If you just give somebody warm leads, and the entirety of their job is calling on warm leads and closing those, right? That's if they apply the same amount of work ethic or they're hyper competitive, they in theory could make more money than someone who has to also do that and close the leads. Right. But there's tremendous value in doing a little bit.
I've been through 4 recessions. I don't know about you all in the room here, but I've been through 4. And the mindset of when I started the company with my brother and Ryan, we didn't have anything, nothing. We had friends and family, and here we are today. And we have a board meeting every. We have tons of openings right now, and we're into a recession. I know people are trying to rewrite what a recession is, but we're in a recession. Things are tightening a bit. You read articles. And I want people to understand what it feels like, because I've been through it, where you have all these openings like, hey, what do I want to work on today? And you get up there and you got 50 people in an office and you look up and you have 3 openings. It's scary.
Yeah.
Real scary. And I've been there 2 or 3 different times. So you can use all the automation you want, but you have to go out and get new customers and new clients that are continuing to hire, right? I mean, it's just, you got to remember that.
And it sounds like the unifying of the two worlds y'all are coming from is the tried and true phrase, work smarter, not harder, right? But an essential part of that too is making sure that the time that gets saved by automating a process, right, and disrupting the industry in that way gets equally translated over into let's maintain that work ethic, but just apply that energy elsewhere, right?
Work smarter and harder.
Exactly. So instead of crushing that report, hey, take that crush, but crush that relationship you're going to build with another 2 clients instead. Don't just be like, wow, cool, I can relax 30% more necessarily.
Yeah, get laser focused and get hungry on that laser focus.
Exactly. And so then maybe the last question I have then for you is, how have y'all tried to maintain that culture of, let's stay hungry, right? Let's seek that growth and that sort of that innate energy of just wanting to drive the business forward and grinding to make that possible, but also acknowledging that there are some luxuries that come with a business scaling and becoming more capital rich and being able to enjoy some of the benefits of, we're a bigger company and we can take a deep breath every once in a while, right? What has been y'all's approach, to maintaining that balance?
Yeah, the balance again, because I was thinking of something.
No, you're good. You're good. The balance basically between y'all are a mature company, but you still have that startup hunger and growth drive, while also being able to relish in some of the luxuries of
that's a great question.
A big company.
It is a great question. Fear. I'm kidding. Putting really fear into people.
Yeah, right.
No, I think there is.
Fear of God.
I think there is good fear. Actually, I really do. I think there's good fear. I think we go to Cancun. There's companies our size that don't do. I say Cancun because that's where we go. Sure. Company trips. We do things like gym memberships. Pay for the difference in premium healthcare. I mean, to do things that help people in the company and look for things. But communication, company calls. We have leadership calls every month. We have quarterly calls. I think we do a lot of things like that to remind people on where we are and what we have to do, and individual conversations. I mean, I was talking about it. It's what I did all morning, is where we are as a company and what we have to do. I think it's extremely important through communication with everybody.
Yeah, and to that point, to add, to describe, I guess in more detail, how we do that. It's very visible. Top performers in our organization are highly visible. And I think this is consistent in every sales-oriented business, which is every business, but staffing business in particular. There is a leader list where everybody's name is listed and their performance. We were just talking about creating another one this morning that is indicative to activity, not just the end result with the gross profit.
Not just the number, but what makes you get the number.
Yeah, the input. And so we, regardless of our size, as we continue to grow, we continue to put more and more emphasis on performance. And that will never change. And so I think it's important, and alongside the leadership calls we're having, the company calls, we're constantly talking about the numbers. I hear people, and this has changed tremendously over the last 5 years, but 6 years, I hear people in the office talking about, hey, if I get one more person in or one more start with this client, then if this guy starts or he accepts the offer, I'm going to be able to buy this suit, or I'm going to be able to go put a down payment on a house, right? Not exactly, but sure. That's the type of conversation I hear being held in the office. And so 5-6 years ago, that never happened.
Yeah, and just the fact of people wanting to be number one, regardless of material things, of just their innate of hey, I'm a competitor and I don't like being where I am. I want to be at the top. If I get 2 more starts, I'm going to be in the top 3 because we send it out every Friday afternoon, and they beg for it. If we forget to attach it, we get emails right away hey, you guys forgot to attach the reports, because they're dying to see it.
Right.
Yeah. And where they rank.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
And we're bringing in the right people. I mean, and you could draw a comparison, and we talk about this all the time. Look at Alabama football. They're a giant reputable, established football program in Division I. You know, they've created a culture over time there, and most great businesses and teams do this. They create a culture over time where, if you know, the coach doesn't necessarily have to be the one that's telling the player, "Hey, you're not doing well. You're not performing." The teammates are doing that work. A great team, you'll see that people hold each other accountable because they collectively hate to lose, which I think is far more important than wanting to win. Like if you have a true hatred for losing, it's going to take you a long way, and that exists at Catapult. And so, you know, everything that we do is just we're just trying to reinforce that.
I hate
ensure
losing
that,
more than winning, period.
Yeah, and ensure that continues, right? As we continue to grow, as everything else changes in the business, if everything else does, that needs to be a constant, for sure.
It's that balance of driving home sort of a sense of healthy competition, almost a healthy competition with yourself, right? Can I beat my own numbers? But also that the competition isn't necessarily to, let me get one in on Bob, who sits next to me. It's actually, no, let's work collaboratively towards a shared end vision. And I think that is an essential part of the top-down leadership, setting that vision, reminding people of that culture, and living and breathing it yourselves. And I feel like I can confidently say, after speaking with y'all now for almost an hour and a half, that that is what I get from y'all, that you live and breathe that every day. You bring that to your casual conversations and your professional phone calls and your tough emails and your congratulatory champagne pops, you know, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, well said. I couldn't say anything better than that. I like that, Daniel.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, then I think with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up, right? End on a high note. Folks, thank you so much for joining us in studio and letting me pick your brain on your leadership vision, the growth of the company. It's really been a pleasure. Folks, we've been chatting today again with Patrick Burke, Chief Executive Officer, and Alex Anderson, Chief Financial Officer at Catapult. Patrick, Alex, if folks want to get in touch with both of y'all, they want to pick your brains some themselves, right? Learn from your leadership. Or maybe they're interested in linking up with CSG. How can they do so, right? Where should we point them?
I would point them directly to our website, catapultsg.com. Thank you to the Uptown Agency and Olivia Burke for recently renovating that.
My daughter.
Our new marketing campaign. But catapultsg.com is a great way to reach out to us, and you can find our information there as well.
And you can call me at 214-336-4499. Again, 214-336-4499. Or patrick.burke@catapultsg.com.
And my email is the same naming convention as that. What was the Mike Jones cell phone number? Do you guys remember that song?
Mike Jones. No, help us.
I forget. He had some song where he announced a cell phone number. Anyways, I bought that cell phone number, so just pull up Mike Jones, find his #1 single, and call that number.
Is that the foot massage dancing guy?
You guys don't remember Mike Jones?
I don't remember.
We'll say that for another conversation.
Okay.
And Daniel, you were awesome. I appreciate it. And anybody, Market Scale has been an amazing partner to Catapult Solutions Group. They really have. So we appreciate you.
That's why we're stealing Daniel.
Yeah.
So sorry, guys.
It's official now, apparently.
Daniel's heading over to Amsterdam to sell international for us. Here, oh, look at the eyes, huh?
I think decision's been
I
made.
think
Sorry, is it Ben? Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, sorry, Ben. On that apology, Ben, don't fire me. Also, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Higher Education, a Catapult podcast. If you like what you heard and saw today, make sure that you're heading to the Catapult website, catapultsg.com, and make sure that you're subscribing to Higher Education on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'm your host, Daniel Litwin, the voice of B2B, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Higher Education.